That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Conclave, the sixth film directed by Edward Berger, which premiered at the 2024 Telluride Film Festival. It is being released courtesy of Focus Features on October 25th, 2024.
Do I know an Edward Berger film?
Probably not, but he got a lot of attention for his last feature, which was a remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, a German film based on an iconic novel by Erich Maria Remarque, which got a raft of Oscar nods, even despite it being not in English, which is surprising over here. I am also familiar with his Deutschland 83 television series, but his work previous to that I have not seen.
What is Conclave about? When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the church. What's your pull quote?
A modest workplace potboiler showcasing the corrupting temptations of power, the papacy has perhaps never been more exciting than Conclave, which ultimately tells us the obvious: those who most desire control should not have it.
Mine. Conclave plays like a high-grade political thriller that could have used more focus on the procedural components and less on the sensational. That being said, I really did enjoy this movie.
It's enjoyable. It's arguably on the dry side. It's based on a book by notable historical fiction writer Robert Harris, and I think all of that feels very much evident. I think it's a very curious pivot for Berger, but he gets a really great cast together, and I think there's some fantastic moments, and the adaptation by Peter Straughan, who did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, that adaptation I think is really good.
If you've watched the trailer, it pretty much shows everything except who's chosen as the new pope. So major spoilers ahead. But the story's pretty simple. The existing pope dies kind of suddenly. Like everyone seems surprised, even though he's old as hell. And so the conclave is the process of selecting a new one. So all the cardinals come together to vote.
Descend upon Vatican City.
And I guess I never thought about it, but it would be pretty political. Mm-hmm. I also, I guess, didn't realize the way it's presented in this film is that the cardinals are kind of split down the middle with being either more liberal or more conservative. But the cardinal in charge of the conclave, like the project manager of the conclave, is Ralph Fiennes. Cardinal Lawrence?
Yes, the dean.
He's the dean of the conclave. So he's kind of in charge of putting it all together. And then we just see them voting. And when I say I wish you would focus more on the procedural, we really don't understand what the dean of the conclave's job is, because he kind of makes conflicting remarks throughout as to what he feels like he should be doing. And then we don't really understand the voting process, but beyond that, whomever wins has to have a certain amount of votes. So then they do the first run of ballots. And if in the first round they don't have enough votes, they just do it again.
Yeah, they remain sequestered.
And they just keep doing it.
Until they find a new pope, yeah.
Which obviously means that they probably feel pressure, like we need to come to a decision, even though nothing has changed in the course of us being sequestered, except that we need to just, like, they're hard pressed to find someone.
Because to the public who's waiting expectantly outside, because they get smoke signals every day about whether there's a new pope, if they take too long, it's much like with jury deliberation. If they take too long, it signifies that there are problems.
There's divide within the church. So, of course, there are some twists and turns with some people who clearly want to be the next pope, playing games, one in particular. And then there's one who is very conservative. And it seems like he wants to take the church back like 60 years. But I think he goes a little bit too far with that rhetoric. But
yeah, he wants to make the Vatican great again.
Exactly. But the big spoiler is that right in the beginning, like 60 minutes before the conclave is supposed to start, like before they're supposed to all be sequestered, this Cardinal Benitez shows up.
From Kabul.
And is like, hey y'all, I was a secret cardinal. The Pope ordained me. And he has documentation, and then Cardinal Lawrence, Ralph Fiennes' character, decides that it does make sense that it would have been a secret because, like you said, he's the Archbishop in Kabul. So obviously, like, to be Catholic, I guess, in Afghanistan and this region that he was in. And this cardinal's known for going to sort of like war-torn areas like the Congo. And so being discreet is important. But Cardinal Benitez shows up, and at the 11th hour, when it seems like the really conservative cardinal will win, that cardinal makes, which we can get into more specifically, but he makes a pretty unfortunate speech that's pretty, I think, racist and bigoted. That's when Benitez pops up.
Sergio Castellitto is the conservative.
Cardinal Tedesco.
Tedesco, yes.
But Benitez's rebuttal, which I thought was probably, I think Isabella Rossellini, her big scene I thought was my favorite.
Also pretty good.
But Benitez's speech is pretty amazing. And then instantly, I mean, if you weren't clued into this stranger showing up, him giving this speech about unity and what it means to be a person of God, if that doesn't convince you.
If you're at all surprised, I think, by the outcome of this vote.
But what you will not see coming, because I haven't read the book, so I'm assuming that this is part of the novel. What you don't see coming is, of course, Benitez is going to become the next pope. And then as he's being because now they need to present the new pope to the people, we find out, and we can get more into it, but we find out that Cardinal Benitez, I guess in today's language, you might say is like a trans man. Mm-hmm. But I think I don't know, at the bare minimum, maybe is intersex.
I think that this person, would probably, based on what we learned, the details we get, I would say intersex sounds the most appropriate.
The end. So that was, I'm sure people have issue with the ending. I thought it was a bit much. Just more like, I want more.
Not sleepaway camp.
No, but it left me hanging oh my gosh. So what is Benitez's intention to be open about who they are? And
well, Benitez makes a callback to an earlier speech from Lawrence, which surprises all the other cardinals and all of a sudden makes him a contender.
Yes.
Which causes some friction with his friend, Bellini, played by Stanley Tucci. But he makes a callback to Benitez, saying that I'm a person that is used to living in life's uncertainties, because Ray Fiennes has a speech about how certainty is the enemy of unity. I think that's a line that's in the trailer as well.
And how if we don't have doubt, then we don't have hope. And I thought that was actually a really great moment. And like you said, Ray Fiennes' character, he expresses doubt. And that after they choose the new pope, he wants to leave his post and go to he just wants to work in a normal church. Mm-hmm. But the pope didn't want him to do that, and we can get into that. But it's that speech he gives about certainty that sways some of the cardinals, and they start voting for him. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to go through my notes. When we see all the pomp and circumstance surrounding the pope, it's kind of funny. And then I guess I know nothing about Catholicism. Are they in the Vatican?
Mm-hmm. Vatican City.
So it's kind of like a hotel. They have all these rooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that they easily lock them all up into.
But the Pope's room looks it's just like a regular. I'm really curious now. I want to research. I don't know how much is out there about the internal workings of Vatican City.
There's a large degree of secrecy about what really goes on. So I'm not sure. But what I know, I learned from movies. So I think this film would make a really great double feature with Nanni Moretti's We Have a Pope, which is kind of the comedic version of the same scenario.
Oh. Well, we see all the ceremony around the Pope having died and preparing his body to be removed. And we see someone taking off his ring, and there's this whole thing about removing
That reminded me of the Dark Crystal.
Yes.
When that Skeksis is screaming about he's still
emperor.
I'm
still emperor. No, I thought the Pope laying in that, he was laying there dead to the bed looking like Dracula. I thought that was funny. So Ray Fiennes has an assistant.
Brian F. O'Byrne.
The assistant is the one who alerts him, like, and they call each other eminency, which I think is funny. But there's this person here who wants to speak to you. They're saying they're like, and they use some phrase that basically implies that this person was made a cardinal in secret. And I think you should talk to them because they want to be a part of this gig. And so Ray Fiennes does, and he believes. And Benitez is Mexican, we're told, but then, of course, served in places outside of Mexico. Because two things happen. John Lithgow is a cardinal. Lithgow, sorry. John Lithgow is a cardinal.
Father Tremblay.
And we find out that Father Tremblay was the last person to have an appointment with the Pope. And there was another priest who was like the Pope's houseboy, I don't know, but he's like a drunk, but he was very close to the Pope. And so after 3 weeks have passed, like an hour before the conclave is supposed to start, this old drunk ass priest shows up and tells Ray Fiennes, I have something to tell you. When John Lithgow met the Pope for that final meeting, they didn't even have that meeting because the Pope immediately dismissed him from his duties. Like stripped him of his shit and then mentioned something about a report.
A withdrawn report.
So then Ray Fiennes asks his assistant, can you do a little like recon and try to talk to some people and see what this report was about? And he gets a little info that refers to the report, but he doesn't know what it is. And then he also says, I found out something else about Cardinal Benitez. And this is where I got a little confused because Ray Fiennes tells his assistant, I don't need any more, what does he say? Like, no more investigating. I don't need any more drama.
We've already learned about too many secrets.
Secrets, yeah. We don't need any more secrets. Like, let's just sequester and get this done. Which comes back to bite him in the ass because after Benitez is selected as Pope and is about to go meet the people, that's when his assistant goes, I have to tell you what I was going to tell you, which is that the Pope paid for Benitez to go to Switzerland for some medical treatment, but it wasn't like a treatment. He went to some sort of clinic. And then because it's in Switzerland, you can put two and two together and think like, oh, maybe it's like a place where they do like, sex reassignment surgery or gender affirming surgery. And that's when Benitez explains to Rafe in private at the very end of the film that he was born with a uterus and ovaries. But of course, having chosen the life he's chosen, it was a very modest life, implying that probably a virgin, probably...
There was no awareness.
There was no awareness of his body maybe being that different. And then he prayed on it and realized that he shouldn't... He says something, that God made me... What does he say? I am what God made me. And
he didn't want, and he didn't ultimately want the uterus removed because he didn't want to tinker with the formula that was designed for him, or something, something to that effect.
Which was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main contenders. So on the conservative side, you have Cardinal Tabasco, and he's very outspoken. Like, he thinks that it should only be an Italian pope, they should speak Latin, we shouldn't, like, very homophobic, like all the things.
But what's curious about that is everybody's speaking for him until we only get that fiery speech from him towards the very end. After a bomb goes off, that's the only time he really speaks.
Yeah, other people are explaining how conservative he is. Then in the middle, like a moderate would be John Lithgow.
Who's power hungry, and we find out that he's been...
We'll get to that.
Doing dirty deeds.
And then the very liberal, like ultra liberal, is Stanley Tucci.
For them, ultra liberal.
Well, he says, like, I'm the exact opposite of Tabasco. Like, I believe in including gays and like reproductive rights and inclusion, and different religions should come together. So he's on the other end of the spectrum. And at first I thought of all the notable people in the film, Stanley Tucci felt the most campy. But then I settled into it because I felt like anyone who would go into this line of work, if that's what we're supposed to call it, you probably would be a little...
Calling.
Your calling. If you follow your calling, you might be a little peculiar, maybe.
Especially to outsiders, sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, Stanley Tucci, by the end, I wasn't fully distracted by him.
He's fine, but his character, I think, is interesting because he keeps saying, I have no interest in being the Pope. And then as soon as his friend Cardinal Lawrence starts getting some votes, he jumps down his throat.
He gets really mad, like, well, we all do this job hoping that we'll be the Pope. Like, don't be stupid.
But he's like, you're taking votes away from me, and how are we going to defeat Tedesco if you do that?
I mean, I will say he was very passionate, like, we can't let this ultra-conservative be the Pope and then take us back 60 years. So I felt like his passion to be the Pope was really rooted in, like, he has an agenda, and he thinks it's the best for the people, where I think Tedesco feels destructive.
Exactly, but Stanley Tucci is treating Ray Fiennes like the public was treating Elizabeth Warren after the 2016 election.
So the first scandal we are aware of is that John Lithgow, what was the word that they used for that? Simony or?
Simony.
Simony, which is basically like bribing people with like positions of power. Like, so if I became president, I'm promising people to give them roles in my cabinet if they support me.
Which was named after Simon Magus, I learned, looking that up.
So we find out that John Lithgow was doing that and also using church money to pay off the other cardinals to vote for him. So that's why the Pope had dismissed him. So that's the first scandal. Then there's another cardinal, this black African man who I believe is from Nigeria, Adeyemi, or Adeyemi.
Played by Lucian Msamati.
And he's getting a lot of votes. So, and like he's overtaken.
He's the lead.
He's the lead over Tabasco. So one day, it's only like 3 days, this conclave. But like on the first day of voting, they're at lunch. And one of the nuns who's like serving the food, she like has an incident at Adeyemi's table, like where she screams and drops a plate. And then he gets up and leaves. So of course Ray Fiennes is like, oh, we need to look into this. And this is where Isabella Rossellini comes in, because she's like the head nun in charge.
Sister Agnes.
So at first she's trying to deal with this other sister who had the incident. And then Ray Fiennes shows up and Isabella's like, no, you're not gonna talk to my employee. I'm gonna let her talk to me. But Ray Fiennes insists. And that's when we learn that she has a baby by Adeyemi from like 30 years ago, which of course is a huge scandal that the potential Pope would have an illegitimate child. But then we find out that John Lithgow is the one who like brought her over. Like he set this up to weaken his competitor.
So you know that these cardinals, even though they didn't know the current Pope was sick or dying, they're all jockeying for who will be next.
Well, they even addressed that like, you know, even though no one knew how sick the Pope was, he had an advanced age, so they knew it was coming. So they were lining up the cards. So you told me about the show with Jude Law.
Yeah, the new Pope from Sorrentino.
It sounds like I should probably watch that.
Probably. I haven't seen that either.
Because what I kind of wanted was more House of Cards.
Yeah, I think that will give you more what you want.
And I think this was more telenovela to be, which I also really like. So my score will reflect that I did really enjoy this film.
Telenovela with no screaming, though.
No, it's not that dramatic, but it's definitely... Because here's the thing that confused me. We only see the voting and then people talking about convincing other cardinals to like throw their votes one way or the other. And, you know, I know this is not trying to be House of Cards, but what I love so much about House of Cards is that we really get the intricacies of how they're playing these games and winning people over and making deals happen. This film is almost like if you told all the stories around that, kind of. Like,
sure.
We spend a lot of time on the voting.
Yes.
And then people kind of talking about what they want and don't want.
Which the voting is very curious to me, because it's like you're just going to be here till somebody gets the percentage they need. So it's really wearing people down to just get on the bandwagon that's the most popular.
Like they're supposed to be sequestered, but they can, I'm assuming, talk to each other because they're eating together and, you know, they're staying in the same hotel-like place. But then sometimes when they're talking, they're trying to be very discreet. So then it's like, well, how are they talking to people to get their votes if they're all acting like they're not supposed to talk? It was like Drag Race, how they Like they can only talk when they're being recorded or something.
Well, just like there's all this behind the scenes drama. They're all whispering and speaking behind closed doors. So it's just like, I don't know. That's the funniest part to me. It's just like all these grown men that are desiring of this.
Well, also because they all seem like kind of bitchy, and it all feels very gay to me. I don't know. It's so peculiar to be this world.
Well, because it is kind of a world of excess, even if it's not always in material things.
Fiennes' character breaks into the dead Pope's room because it's been sealed off like Dracula with that blood stamp or whatever, that waxy blood stamp. So he goes in there and he finds the report, which I just thought...
He finds it a little too easily. Like about Tremblay, which is tucked behind the head frame.
And it's stamped confidential and it has bank statements and so...
But he goes and makes...
He goes to make photocopies. And who's in the copy machine room? Isabella Rossellini.
She goes, I'll do that for you, Father.
Because she doesn't like... I mean, clearly she had a fondness for the previous Pope, who was more liberal, and she doesn't like the people who were in the lead. So she does her best FedEx job, and we see all her nuns like putting this report on every cardinal's like place setting in the dining room, and then it causes a huge stir. And then there's infighting because they're saying that Ralph Fiennes is not a good dean because he won't reveal all the details of the report because he's redacted some stuff. But then this is when Isabella gets her shining moment. And it's in the trailer where she says, I know nuns are supposed to be quiet, but we have eyes and ears. And then she explains
that Tremblay dispatched this nun
for the purpose
of bringing down Father Adeyemi.
Yeah.
And then she does a little curtsy.
And then she does a curtsy, which was so cute. Okay, the voting process. I wonder if it takes so long because there were, 120 of them? And each of them have to say a little prayer?
Yeah, they have to in Latin.
Obviously, as the audience, we're not seeing all of that, but I just kept thinking 120 people have to get up and say a prayer before they put their ballot in?
That's why it's exhausting. That's why it wears them down.
That's why, one round takes all day. Oh, that would drive me crazy. I did think it was funny that Cardinal Tabasco has a vape pen.
Oh yeah, that was Castellitto. He was using that for dear life.
The film is shot beautifully.
Stéphane Fontaine, who did A Prophet for Jacques Audiard.
We get a lot of shots of Ralph Fiennes looking at a mural. What did you think that represented?
Well, he's staring up into the heavens, because you mean the mural when he's voting and the bomb goes off and the ceiling caves in? His character just seems like he has romanticized his role that he cannot possibly ever live up to, and to me that seems very much a gesture of how he is and why he's also kind of disappointed, because his backstory too that he keeps telling people is that he hasn't lost his faith, but he's having trouble praying, like communicating with God. So I think that's what he's searching for, is a way back to...
He also says he has doubt in the church. But like you said, sort of the final round of, one of the second to last round of voting, the first person to get up is Ralph Fiennes, and when he goes to put his ballot in, a car bomb goes off. And then we realize that there were some terrorist attacks in not only Vatican City, but what are we told?
Surrounding areas.
Surrounding areas. So that's when we have the big scene where some key cardinals go into a room and Tedesco starts going off about Muslims and
how they have a war to fight.
That we need to vigorously and aggressively engage in a religious war, and it just sounds all so
It sounds exactly like the thing you don't say before an election.
And then Benitez gets up and is just so perfectly mannered and just gives this really beautiful speech that, again, if you weren't clued into the fact that this stranger shows up right before selecting the new pope, after his speech, you know that he's going to get it.
But then it just seems like this group of people who, I'm very unclear based on the parameters of this film, how they're able to campaign for their...
Okay, that's the other thing, yeah.
For their bid, because then the two people that accidentally have a platform for which they give an impassioned speech, which would be Ralph Fiennes and Carlos Dietz playing Benitez, those are what starts getting people to vote for them.
Right, so exactly. That's what I was so confused. You would think that they would do because I knew nothing about the conclave, I assumed that they do because they tell us a first round of voting, which implies there are multiple rounds. And because that's not how most elections work, I assume that they get an initial like cohort of people who the other members are interested in. And then maybe those 5 or 6 people give a speech and give their position and talk about how they want to take the church. It's just so weird to me that these they voted for a cardinal they had never met before. They don't know anything about this person. So what is the vetting process?
Well, if he is a cardinal, that's it. Then you're eligible. But yeah, I mean, it's very vague. I don't know if the expectation is that you're supposed to know these things ahead of time watching this movie.
I would have liked to have known those details. As it is, though, I still really enjoyed this film. What would you give Conclave?
3.5.
I think it's very good. I would give it 3.5 out of 5.
If you like something like The Two Popes with Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce, this would be up your alley. Yeah.
Okay. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.